Hosted by you/horror_writer_1717. I used to work in a fire tower with a strange set of rules. I'll never make that mistake again. It wasn't all that long ago when I worked as a park ranger in a fire tower. You'd think it would be an easy job. You'd be wrong. Once I found a strange list of rules, it was all downhill from there. Suffice it to say, I was lucky to get out with my life while still being a free man. There was an investigation into the matter, and I was questioned several times by the police. But they didn't want to hear the truth of the story, that something strange and supernatural happened that night in that fire tower. Unfortunately, one of my fellow rangers wasn't so lucky. But that's another story. I never went back to that tower. Ever. I searched for a few weeks before finding a new job. It was just in the nick of time because I hadn't worked as a park ranger long enough to make much money, and switching back and forth between peanut butter sandwiches and mac and cheese wasn't the best way to stave off starvation, but beggars can't be choosers. So, I applied for this job and went into the office building in town for the interview. The first question I asked was, "Does it have any strange rules?" The interviewer looked at me like I had just sprouted a second head. "Like what kinds of rules?" she said. "I don't know, like don't answer the phone at a certain time of night, or if you see a glowing orb, look away for 30 seconds. Are you planning on seeing any glowing orbs inside our warehouse?" she said hesitantly. "I hope not." She held my gaze for a long moment before answering my question. I started to wonder if she was going to kick me out of her office. "To answer your original question," she said, "I don't know of any strange rules for the warehouse. To my knowledge, it's a standard night watchman job. You go there, you make sure no one breaks in and takes anything, you go home. That's a relief. Just out of curiosity, why did you ask about strange rules?" "My last job had some strange rules, and let's just say it didn't end well." "Oh. All right," she said. "I suppose that would be a good question for you to ask then." The rest of the interview was standard stuff. Thankfully I hadn't blown it and got the job. She gave me my employee packet and the address of the warehouse. She told me I would be trained on the job, when to be there for my first shift, and the name of my supervisor, Mr. Larson. I thanked her and went on my merry way, happy to have a job that was easy and paid decent. The next couple days went by slowly as anticipation built for my first shift. When I got in my car, the gas gauge told me I would be pushing it to make it back and forth to work before I got my first paycheck. I drove to the address and found it in what looked like an abandoned business park. There were other warehouses along the drive with weeds growing through the cracks in the pavement and up the sides of the buildings. There were streetlights, but they looked old and decrepit. Only 2 of them were still emanating their putrid yellow light, fighting a losing battle against the darkness. I came to the end of the road, and looming in front of me was a massive warehouse. The GPS on my phone told me I had arrived, but I wasn't sure I wanted to. It was all by itself, surrounded by woods on all sides except for the notch that had been cut out to make the road. I pulled around to the side where the main door was and was slightly comforted by the car that was parked in front. At least there was some other living soul out here. I got out, taking my bag of supplies with me. I started toward the door and hit the remote button to lock the car out of habit. The horn's chirp echoed through the trees, making me even more aware of their presence. I wasn't looking forward to doing security checks around the perimeter. There was only one security light that I'd seen when I drove up, and it was near the entrance. I approached the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. I looked around for anything and found a keypad. I opened up my email on my phone and read the instructions I'd been sent. "Your shift is from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., it read. "You cannot leave between those hours. The code for the keypad is your employee code. That way we know it's you inside." I paused. There was something about that last sentence that gave me chills. I reread it and decided it was just a security thing. "Your employee code is 2059. It should open any doors you need access to inside. If you have any problems, call or text the number included in your packet." I didn't remember getting any number in my packet, but maybe I'd just skimmed over it. I entered my code on the keypad. The light above the numbers turned green and heard the lock click. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. When the door shut, I heard the lock click again. I stared at it as if the sound had some finality to it. Just out of curiosity, I typed in my code on the inside keypad, but the light stayed red and the door stayed locked. I tried to shrug it off, thinking it was like a timecard thing. That it wouldn't open again until 9 a.m. I looked at my watch and it read, 9:02 p.m. I turned toward the inside set of doors and punched in my code. The green light and click granted me entry. If I'm gonna have to type in my code at every door, it's gonna be a long night, I thought. I stepped into what looked like a small reception area. There was a desk and a couple of vinyl couches along the wall. It was sparsely decorated and dimly lit. The only painting I saw on the wall had a picture of a large gate that was dark red with words in some other language. I walked through the first set of doors after inputting my code. They opened up into a long dimly lit hallway with doors on both sides. The first one I came to said, "Security." It was no surprise when I saw a keypad on the door lock. I typed in my code and opened the door. Inside there was a desk with monitors and a computer. There was also a table with 2 chairs, another vinyl couch, a mini fridge, and a small bathroom. I set my bag down on the couch and got my water bottle out. I opened the fridge and found a lunchbox with a bottle on the door. I guess it belongs to the guard I'm supposed to relieve, I thought. Where is he anyway? I put my bottle in and closed the fridge, then looked around the room more closely. There were 3 doors on the far wall that I hadn't noticed. I opened the first one and found it was a closet. A light jacket hung there, and a small duffel bag sat on the shelf. I sat my bag beside it and closed the door. I opened the second one to find a weapons locker. 2 handguns, and 2 shotguns, along with tasers and pepper spray were locked behind a metal mesh door. I tried the door out of curiosity, but it refused to budge. Surprisingly, there wasn't a keypad to punch in numbers, it was an actual lock. I looked around for the keys but didn't find them. Maybe the other guard had them. I closed the door and tried to open the third one. It remained locked. Maybe it's a maintenance closet or something. I sat at the desk and looked at the computer. The screen had a login screen. I typed in my code and it came up to an email. I had 3 messages. I clicked on the first one that read, "First log in." I opened it and read, "Welcome to your first shift. I'm sure by now you have some questions. First off, you need to log into our Wi-Fi. If you look at your phone, you'll see there's no cell service inside the building." I looked and sure enough, my phone had no service. I followed the directions to hook up to their Wi-Fi. Once I logged in, a strange symbol flashed on my phone, then it went blank for a whole minute. I tried to go back or go to the home screen, but nothing happened. I was about to power off when suddenly the screen came back. Everything seemed normal and I was able to do everything but make calls. My phone dinged as I received a text. "Congratulations on setting up your phone on our corporate Wi-Fi. Calling will be disabled while you're on shift. If you have any needs, text this number. Someone is monitoring 24/7. I saw the number they sent and saved it as corporate. I opened the second email and read the message. "Your duties. Monitor for any unusual activity. If there is unusual activity, text corporate immediately. Check to make sure all doors are secure. Do green patrols twice per shift. Do a red patrol once per shift. Do yellow patrols 4 times per shift." I was wondering what that meant when a video started showing the hallway floors that had different color stripes of paint. There was green, yellow, and red, and then there seemed to be another color beside them. Before I could make it out, the video ended. "Take your breaks only in the security room." The email ended. I looked at the subject for the third one and it read, "Open only after the first patrol." I hovered the arrow over the subject and was tempted to click, but just then I got a text. "Have you done your first patrol yet?" It read. Great, I thought. Just what I need is to be nagged at work. "Not yet." I texted back. "Better get to it." I sighed and stepped to the door when my phone dinged. "Don't forget your flashlight." I read it and looked at the closet, realizing I had done just that. I slowly looked back at the phone, thinking many things I'd like to respond, but texted, "Thanks." I went to the closet and got my flashlight out of my bag. I looked at my phone and thought, anything else? Wondering if it would respond. Thankfully it didn't. My phone literally reading my thoughts would be disturbing beyond belief. I opened the door and glanced at my phone to see if I'd done anything else wrong. It remained, thankfully, silent. I stepped back into the hallway where every third light was lit. I assumed it was the nighttime lighting, and started down the hall looking at the floor. The lines were just like in the video. The 4th line was black. I paused at the ramifications of being guided towards something they didn't want me to check on. That either meant they didn't care about it or didn't trust me to check it. Either one was disconcerting. I decided to get a yellow patrol out of the way. I followed the line down the hall, glancing at each door that was marked with a letter and a number. The first one said, A1. The next said, A2. As I continued, the letter remained the same as the numbers increased, odd numbers on the right side doors, even on the left. I reached the end of the hall and the yellow and green lines turned right down another hall. The red and black went left. I glanced left but stayed right. My curiosity would have to wait until later. I followed the lines down the next hall and read the first door. It said, B1. This continued down the entire hall, just like the first. At the end, the green line turned left while the yellow went right. This hall started with, C1. The entire time I'd been walking there was total silence. There wasn't the sound of air conditioners or anything. It was eerie. I stopped and looked around. The hallway and all the doors were pristine. There wasn't a bit of dirt. It didn't look like a warehouse. At least not like I thought the inside of a warehouse would look. This was something else. I would have to make a list of questions to ask when I got back to the security room. I continued my round and followed the yellow line as it turned right again. This hall started with D1. When I reached the end of the hall, the line dead-ended at a door. I hesitated for a moment before opening it into another hall. I turned and looked at the other side of the door. It said, A1. I looked to the left and saw the security room. The yellow line had taken me in a circle. Or I suppose it would be a square. I shook my head, stepped into the security room, and sat down at the computer. The email sat waiting. I clicked it. Congratulations on your first successful patrol. I read the sentence and felt uneasy at the word successful. Why wouldn't it be successful? I thought. By now you probably have some questions. Perhaps we can answer them before you ask. First, the black line. Do not follow it under any circumstances. Second, as I'm sure you've already noticed, you cannot leave until your shift is over. Third, make sure you close any door you open. These are some basic rules. There will be more as your shift commences. I looked for any more emails, but there were none. Great, I thought. More rules. At least these ones aren't all weird and creepy. I opened the mini fridge and took a drink from my water bottle. As I put it back, I glanced at the lunchbox and wondered where the other guard was. I checked my watch, and it was almost 10. I figured I should do my first green line patrol. I went back out into the hallway and followed the green line to the point where it veered away from the yellow. The silence in the hall was starting to bother me. Listening to my own footsteps was unnerving. The green line led to another similar corridor. This one was E Hall. I was starting to wonder just how big this place was when I heard a sound I didn't make. I slowly turned and looked back to find an open door. I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt it wasn't open when I went past it. I shone my flashlight around, looking for anything and anyone. But nothing was there. I approached the door and was about to close it and resume my patrol when I heard the sound again. My hand hovered over the knob as my curiosity overwhelmed my fear and common sense. Instead of shutting the door and moving on, I opened it enough to look inside. The room was dark. I considered turning on the light but instead opted to use my flashlight. I shone it around the room that looked like a lab, with plenty of workstations. I did a slow lap around the room looking for anything out of the ordinary. Which was laughable because I had no idea what went on in this room or this building on a day-to-day basis, so how would I know what was normal for this place? In the middle of my lap, I noticed a dim light underneath a door at the far end of the room. I slowly approached it, turned the knob, and peeked inside. I wish I wouldn't. There was a large glowing glass container that held. An entity is the only thing I can think to call it. I know if I call it what I think it should be called, I'll go insane on the spot. It was easily the size of a large human and then some. It was black and covered with what I could only describe as scales. There were sharp points sticking out on its elbows, knees, and seemingly random spots along its head and torso. Its face was a nightmare. With horns sticking out of its forehead and curling up like a ram's. It was hovering inside the container somehow even though there was no liquid inside it and holding its legs making it look like it was curled up in the fetal position. I kept the flashlight down so as not to risk disturbing this thing. I panned around the room. There seemed to be controls of some sort near the container that were making occasional hissing sounds. It was as if the machine was breathing for it. How I kept from screaming and running out of the room, I don't know. Through some miracle, I kept it together and slowly backed away. I held the doorknob, turned, then slowly released it once the door was closed. I breathed a sigh of relief and started toward the door that led to the hallway. I was almost there when I heard the soft scuffle of a foot on the floor. I froze and turned back to the room, panning slowly with my light. At first, I didn't see anything and then a tiny pale hand reached up and turned the knob that led into the monster's room. I didn't want to know what was doing it, I just wanted it to stop. After a quick rundown of potential outcomes, I settled on getting out of that room as quietly as possible. I stepped toward the hallway door while shooting furtive glances back at the other door that was slowly opening. I could see the creature in its container and the thing that had opened the door. It was small, only a few feet tall, with gangly legs and arms, but what froze my blood was seeing its face. It was embedded in its torso. 2 eyes and a mouth full of sharp, grinning teeth were right where its belly should have been. It had no head. It was like someone had smashed all but a few inches of this creature's torso and left the face there. It looked at me and its horrific smile grew as it reached the controls in the room. I backed out into the hallway and closed the door quietly, then ran as I followed the green line to its ending underneath the door. I hesitated to open the door with my new knowledge that there were potentially dangerous creatures lurking behind every door. Finally, I turned the knob and peeked out into a hallway. The first thing I saw was 4 lines on the floor, which told me I was once again in the first hall. I looked at the number on the door. It read, A2. I jumped out and slammed the door shut, diving into the security room and shutting that door as well. I leaned against it for a long moment wondering how I was going to do another patrol knowing that either or both of those creatures could be stalking the hallways. My attention was grabbed by one of the monitors. There were over a dozen images being transmitted onto different sections of a large TV. I looked at the videos for the first time and noticed there wasn't a single camera aimed at the outside of the building. They were all inside. My breath caught in my throat. That means they aren't afraid of what's outside, but what's inside. I watched the monitors. Fortunately, they were in color. I focused on the cameras that showed green lines on the floor and waited to see if any of the doors opened. After 30 minutes I hadn't seen any movement. I sat back in my chair, feeling a little better. I decided to do another yellow patrol. I didn't want to. I would have rather stayed in the security room for the rest of my shift, but that wasn't an option. I comforted myself with the thought that I'd been watching the cameras and nothing had moved. It wasn't much comfort. I picked up my flashlight, trying to keep it steady as my shaking hands showed my hesitation. I stepped through the security room door and out into the hallway. Somehow it looked different now. Before, when I was just checking a bunch of doors, I convinced myself that nothing of interest was in any of the rooms. Now I knew better. Now I looked at each room as if it were about to spring open, and I shook the thoughts away. I had to, or I wouldn't take another step. I walked down the first hall, ears attuned to any sound. At my first turn, all I heard were my own footsteps. Even they gave me pause and had me whipping around to look behind me from time to time. By the second turn, I was beginning to feel a little less nervous. By the third turn, I was almost calm, until I saw where the green line split off from the yellow. I stopped and stared down the green hall, wondering if that thing had slipped out. For an instant, I thought I saw movement. I shone my light all around but saw nothing. Even so, I picked up the pace for my last hallway and quickly opened the security room door, then closed it, feeling my heart racing. I looked at my watch and it was nearly midnight. I'd done 3 of my 7 patrols. My phone dinged. There was a text. "It's nearly midnight," it said. I wanted to reply sarcastically but thought better of it. What's special about midnight? Didn't they tell you? Tell me what? The rules. My heart hammered in my chest. Not again. They told me I couldn't leave before my shift was over and to do the different color patrols. That's not the rules I'm talking about. I knew it before the text came. Do I want to know what they are? I texted. You need to. What if I just sit in the security room? There wasn't an immediate text back. There are things that would happen. Like what? Like things that would destroy you, or at least your mind. I sighed. So send me the list of rules. I shook my head in disbelief that I was doing this crap again. 1. At midnight you must be in the security office and stay there until 12:30 a.m. No matter what you see or hear, you must stay in the office and don't open the door for any reason. That doesn't sound ominous at all, I texted. 2. When doing a patrol, if you hear someone calling to you or screaming, ignore it. Do not attempt to find the source of the sound. 3. If the doors start changing, follow the lines back to the security room. That should actually take care of you for now. Just remember, do not follow the black line and don't go into any rooms. Are you kidding me with this? I texted. I don't want to do this again. Let me out. Sorry, not possible. Nothing can open those doors until your shift is over. And what did you mean, again? I worked in a fire tower with weird rules. Interesting. I'd like to hear that story someday. Good luck. Thanks a lot. By the way, where's the key to the weapons locker? Just in case. Didn't the guard you relieved give it to you? I haven't seen him. That's not good news. Is there a spare key somewhere? No return text came. Hello? Is there a spare key? No response. I checked my watch and it was 12:01. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. I took a step toward it before I remembered the rules I'd been texted. The knocking became more insistent. Next, the doorknob began rattling as if someone was trying to tear it out of the door. "Who's there?" I said, cringing at my own words. The doorknob stopped rattling. There was a silence that was only broken by the pounding of my heartbeat. "It's Mr. Larson," a voice said. "I've misplaced my key, could you let me in?" I took another step and reached for the doorknob when I remembered. "There's a keypad on the door," I said. "If you are who you say you are, just punch in your code and the door will open." There was silence on the other side of the door. It lasted so long that I wondered if whoever it was had gone away. I leaned against the door and put my ear up to it. That's when I heard the loudest, most blood-curdling, inhuman scream I'd ever heard in my life. I threw myself on the floor trying to get away from the door as quickly as possible. The pounding continued. I wondered how long the door would hold up and what I would do when whatever it was broke it down. I held my flashlight like a baseball bat, looking all around the room for a better weapon and not finding any. My eyes fell on the weapons locker, wishing I had the key. The door started bowing inward with every blow. It was so bad I got one of the chairs from the break table and wedged it against the doorknob. I stepped back and looked at my handiwork. The ludicrousness of a folding metal chair trying to hold off an assault that was bowing a solid door was enough to make me laugh. I knew it wouldn't last long. Sawdust was raining down on the floor. I considered locking myself in the bathroom but saved that for a last resort. And then suddenly, the assault stopped. The last few remnants of sawdust floated to the floor in silence. I gripped the flashlight tighter, not trusting this respite. Sweat dripped from my forehead as I waited for the assault to resume. Nothing happened. I stood there, staring at the door, dumbfounded, not knowing what to do next. I glanced at my watch and it said 12:32 a.m. The text said stay in the office from 12 to 12:30, I thought. Maybe it's okay to go out now. I grasped the doorknob and slowly turned, taking a deep cleansing breath before pulling it open. I'm not sure what I expected to be there, but what I found was nothing. The hallway looked the same as it had before. No. Wait. The lines on the floor, they were wrong. Every other time I came out of the security office, the lines stretched down the hallway to the right. Now, they were going left. I looked to the right and saw the doors that went to the reception area and eventually the outside doors. This is impossible, I thought, my breathing becoming erratic with panic. I pulled out my phone and texted. The lines are reversed. It took a moment for the response. Did you break any rules? No, I did everything the way you said. Someone was trying to beat down the office door but I didn't open it. Have you gone in any rooms? No, wait, on my second round I found an open door and went inside to check it. Not good. What did you see? Nothing, I lied. Are you sure? I didn't see anything but an empty room. Then why are the lines switched? I have no idea. You're the one who's supposed to know this stuff. Okay, do a yellow line patrol. When you get to the end, instead of going through the door the line ends at, open the first door on your right and go through it. And that'll fix things. Hopefully. What do you mean, hopefully? No return text came. Come on, man, you've got to be kidding me with this, I texted but still got no response. I looked left, then right, then back at the security room. I sighed and turned left down the hallway following the lines. It was shortly after my first turn that I noticed a difference. The place was still silent except for my footsteps, but something felt off. It was like I was in a different place, but it looked the same. It was almost like I was walking through a replica of the warehouse, but different. Aside from the fact that I was going in the opposite direction, which defied the laws of physics because this hallway didn't exist, there was something else. I found out what it was when I stopped. My footsteps kept going. I stood there halfway down the hall, listening to my footsteps continue on without me. I looked down and my shoes were still on my feet, so that was some comfort. I stomped my shoe on the floor, but to my surprise, it made no sound. I stared at my shoes as my footsteps rounded the corner and faded. I rushed to catch up, but the sound was gone. I looked down the dimly lit hall before me and saw nothing. My nerves were getting a workout as I resumed my patrol in total silence. My shoes no longer made any sound. I tried stomping again, but nothing happened. When I turned the next corner, I was greeted by the worst sight imaginable. The little thing that had been in the room on my green patrol was standing in the middle of the hall staring at me and smiling that disturbing grin on its belly. But that wasn't the worst part. Behind him was the black scaly creature from the glowing container. It stood at least 8 feet high and was breathing smoke. It looked at me and extended wings I didn't know it had. They reached both walls easily. It also was smiling. Neither smile was comforting. I found my feet rooted to the floor and my knees shaking. The smaller creature made a chittering sound as it started toward me and the larger took its first step. Its foot landed with the force of a jackhammer. The sound was debilitating. I covered my ears as they approached. I turned to run back to where I came from, but somehow, impossibly, the same creatures were approaching from that hallway. I glanced back and forth at the mirror images of the unearthly threats closing in on me from both sides. I had no choice. I dove into the nearest door and slammed it shut. The pounding began right away. I backed away, but my foot stepped into empty air. I turned to find I was at the top step of a stairway, but only for a moment. Gravity took over and I tumbled down the stairs. Fortunately, there was a landing that kept me from falling the rest of the way. I slowly stood and made sure of my balance while looking around at my new environment. The stairs I had fallen down looked like concrete and had no railings. I glanced over the side at the darkness that seemed to go on forever. It reminded me of the Moria mine staircase in Lord of the Rings. I looked up the stairs at the door that was still under assault, then looked down the stairs that disappeared into the darkness. Looking around the room, I saw no other option. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I had to go in a room, sorry, I texted. No response. Come on, don't be like that. Answer me. Nothing. I looked at the phone and it showed no Wi-Fi signal. Great, I said, hearing the word echo back to me. I sighed and started down the stairs. Fortunately, there was a landing every 30 steps or so. Each landing started the next set of stairs in a different direction. Looking down through the middle of the staircase, I could see them disappear in an elongated square. After a few landings, I found myself thinking the strangest thought. What about the rest of my rounds? The unending stairs didn't answer. As I continued down my squared circle, I found myself getting tired. More than once I stumbled and nearly rolled down the stairs, only catching myself in the nick of time to avoid falling into the abyss. I'd been walking for what felt like hours. I checked my watch and it said 2:22 a.m. I was tired and thirsty. I sat down on a step above a landing and contemplated my non-existent options. I could keep going. I leaned over and looked down at the continuing endless stairs. I could go back. I looked up at the seemingly endless stairs above me, knowing the creatures were somewhere up there waiting. I wondered if I would be fired for not doing my patrols and if I truly cared. My first hunger pang ripped through my stomach. I know, I said, looking at my belly. The food's somewhere up there. I pointed in some random upward direction, having no idea where the security office was.